In Lesson 2, we're going to talk about what's new in Windows 8. We'll cover the new features, the enhanced features. We'll talk about what's missing in Windows 8 that was in previous versions. We'll discuss whether or not you should upgrade an old machine to Windows 8, whether you should buy a PC, laptop, or tablet, and we'll discuss the upgrade specifications. Let's talk about what's new in Windows 8. By far the biggest change is the modern, or what they used to call Metro user interface. In the early beta versions of Windows 8, the Microsoft folks referred to it as the Metro interface, but somewhere along the line that changed. It could be due to legal reasons or whatever, but now they want you to call it the modern interface or the Windows 8 interface. What is the modern interface? Well, it's this thing. It's the new start screen. It's the new apps and live tiles. We'll talk about the details of this new modern interface in a few minutes. Unlike previous versions of Windows, Windows 8 has touch interaction built in. It's been designed from the ground up to work on phones, tablets, as well as desktop PCs. Windows 8 has something called SkyDrive, which is Microsoft's attempt at cloud computing. Now, what is cloud computing? Well, cloud computing is basically a fancy term for saying that your files and your settings and your bookmarks and all those things are stored on Microsoft's servers up on the web. Now, that can be good or bad depending on the circumstances, and we'll talk more about cloud computing in a future lesson. But if you're the kind of person that likes to travel and you want to be able to access your information from multiple computers, then storing your documents in the cloud makes a lot of sense. You can work on your laptop at home in the evening, and the next morning when you go into work, you don't have to bring the computer with you. All of your information is right there on Microsoft's cloud. You can even sync up your home laptop with your Windows 8 desktop PC at the office, and when you sit down, all of your settings are the same, your shortcuts are the same, your files are the same. That's the beauty of cloud computing. The major downside, of course, is you rely on Microsoft's cloud to do your work, so it's always good to have a local copy of your important information stored on your computer. And again, we'll have a whole lesson later on about cloud computing. Now, to use SkyDrive, you need something called a Microsoft account, which syncs all your settings and your files and so forth. You can log onto your computer using either a Microsoft account or a local account, which is an account just on your computer. I personally like the extra security available by storing my files on my local computer. If I want to be able to get to them, I can always log in remotely using something like Windows Desktop. So I don't personally store too much on SkyDrive unless it's something that I want to share. But the Microsoft account also works well with the next feature. Social networking is very ingrained into Windows 8. There are different apps that work well with all the different social networking sites like Facebook, Twitter, Gmail, and so on. You can set up your Gmail accounts, your calendars, your Facebook messaging, all that right inside of Windows 8 apps. You don't have to go to all these different websites in order to access all this other information. The People app, for example, in Windows 8, can pull all of your contacts in from all the different services that you belong to. We'll see how that works later. Windows 8 has much more powerful search tools than previous versions of Windows, and we'll talk about search in a few minutes. Now, for the nerds, Windows 8 has a much better enhanced task manager. The new task manager shows all kinds of extra information about all the different apps and the background processes that are running. It's got performance graphs. It's got app history. You can control the startup programs from in here. There's all kinds of additional settings in here, and we'll talk about this in one of my future expert level classes. Windows 8 has better boot and recovery options, giving you more options to repair your system if something goes wrong. Windows 8 has USB 3.0 support. Now, USB 3 is the latest, fastest version of USB. USB stands for Universal Serial Bus, and it's what you connect devices to your computer with. Now, for most devices, like an external keyboard or a mouse, it doesn't matter if you have USB 3.0. Those are very low-speed devices. However, if you've got one of the new external USB 3.0 hard drives, those things run really, really fast under USB 3. And in older versions of Windows, you had to have extra drivers and all kinds of extra software to take advantage of that extra speed. Well, Windows 8 has that built in. Windows 8 has much better security than older versions of Windows. We talked about some of the encryption methods earlier, like that encrypted file system and the BitLocker. There's also something called Secure Boot, where Windows actually takes control of the computer from the time you turn it on. So it's much more difficult for viruses and other malware to get in there in that bootloader section before the operating system actually loads up. Windows Defender has been enhanced. Windows Defender watches your computer against attacks. It has a firewall. There's also a new and improved virus scan. If you have a tablet or a phone, you can set up something called a picture password, where you load a picture into the system, and instead of typing in a password, you draw a little outline on the picture, whatever gestures you want, and that acts as a password. And of course, you can still use the old traditional username and password login method as well. Windows 8 has something really cool called storage spaces. You can set up storage pools where, let's say you hook up 2 or 3 external hard drives to your machine. Well, you can create a virtual drive out of all 3 of those. So you can use it as one big virtual hard drive, or you can set up drive mirroring, where the information is copied to 1 or 2 of them. In case one of them fails, you've got a copy on the second one. Storage spaces is really neat. Windows 8 has much better multi-monitor support than older versions of Windows had. And you can do things like stretch the taskbar across both monitors, all kinds of additional features. We'll talk about multi-monitor support in a future lesson. One of the biggest changes in Windows 8 is the inclusion of apps. Now, apps are different from traditional Windows desktop applications, also called programs. You download apps from the Microsoft Store. There are both free and paid apps available. If you're familiar with Android phones or the iPhone, you'll know that Google has the Google Play Store, formerly called the Android Market, and Apple has its own store as well. And that's where you download different apps from. Well, Microsoft is doing the same thing with Windows 8. Your Windows apps will work on your Windows 8 PC. They'll work on your Windows tablet or your Windows phone. We'll show you the Microsoft Store a little later on and show you how to download some apps as well. Now, with all the new features that Windows 8 has, it's actually missing 3 very important things that were in previous versions of Windows. The most important thing, in my opinion, is the Start button. The Start button has been part of Windows since Windows 95. So for 17 years, almost 18 years, people have been used to clicking on the Start button to do things. If you've used older versions of Windows, like Windows 7 and before, you know how invaluable that Start button is. It's right down there in the bottom left corner. Anytime you want to do anything, you just click on the Start button. You can find your files, you can find your programs, you can search. It's all in one nice, easy spot. Well, they got rid of it. If you look at Windows 8, there's nothing there. There's a couple icons. There's Internet Explorer and a folder. And if you move your mouse down here in the bottom left corner right there, you see the Start menu, and you can click on that, and it brings you into the new Windows Start screen. But I have to say, it's jarring. It's especially different for people who aren't Windows pros and are used to what they're used to. It's a whole different level of training. And I'm happy to do the training because that's what I do, but I think it's a mistake for Microsoft to completely remove that button. Now, I'll try to save all my nitpicks and gripes for a future lesson, but I wish the Start button was back. Now, there are a couple of different third-party utilities that you can install that bring back a Start button. And I've done that on my laptop that I use Windows 8 on, because I want the Start button. But if anyone from Microsoft is listening, bring back the Start button. Another feature that Microsoft got rid of, DVD playback. This isn't quite as big of a deal. In older versions of Windows, you could put a DVD right in your DVD drive, and the DVD would play right inside a Windows Media Player. Well, since the DVD technology was licensed by someone else, Microsoft had to pay a fee for each copy of Windows they sold. So I can understand why Microsoft got rid of DVD playback right in Windows. Now, there are some great third-party utilities and programs you can download that will do DVD playback. One of them is called the VLC Player. It's free. I'm going to have a lesson toward the end of this class where I'm going to show you my list of suggested extra downloads you should get, and that's definitely one of them. And you'll also note the Media Center application is now gone from Windows. That is an extra download that you can pay for from Microsoft if you have Windows 8 Professional. Media Center basically allows you to do things like record live TV and all kinds of extra multimedia functions, and we'll talk about that in a future lesson. But if you're looking for all those Media Center features, well, they're not bundled with Windows anymore. Again, for most of us, those last two things aren't a big deal. Now, chances are if you're watching this video, you've already purchased Windows 8 or you've got a new computer that's got Windows 8 on it. But still, lots of people ask me, should I upgrade my other computers, my old computers, to Windows 8? Well, I've always been a very if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of guy. If you're happy with Windows 7 or XP or 2000 or whatever operating system you happen to be running, then stick with it. If your computer is running good and you're happy with its performance, stick with your old operating system. Now, if you see some of these new features in Windows 8 that you really, really want, then by all means go ahead and upgrade. Or if there are new apps that you want to run, then upgrading is smart for you. Now, if you're running Windows 7, you have a newer laptop or a newer desktop PC, you might have bought it in the last year or so and it's running kind of weird, well, you might want to consider upgrading to Windows 8 and then doing a fresh install of Windows on your laptop. That might speed things up a little bit and fix it. I've noticed on a couple of my machines that upgrading from 7 to 8 has really helped with performance. You'd think that a newer operating system would have more strict hardware requirements, but that's not necessarily the case. Actually, Microsoft fine-tuned the operating system a lot moving from 7 to 8. And I've noticed that machines that were running 7 that are now running 8 run a little bit faster on the newer operating system. But again, I only recommend that if you're having problems with your other machine or if it's running slow, or you see some new features in Windows 8 that you really, really want. Now, another question I get asked all the time, so I figured I'd include it here in the class. People ask me, do I buy a PC, a laptop, or a tablet? And by PC, of course, I mean a desktop PC. Well, the question of PC versus laptop boils down to three things: portability, price, and expansion. If you need portability, the ability to go down and work in your kitchen or down in the break room or on the road or on the plane, you definitely need a laptop. But keep in mind, laptops are more expensive. So laptops cost more for the same hardware. So if mobility is not a concern for you, go with a desktop PC. If you're always going to work in your office, then a desktop PC makes more sense. Desktop PCs are also easier to expand. You can put new hardware in them, you can open them up, you can put a faster processor in, you can add a bigger hard drive. The expansion capabilities with a laptop are often very limited. Now, for today's user, if all you're doing is some word processing and browsing the web, then you can get a good laptop for under $500. And I definitely recommend it if you have any desire whatsoever to move around. I like to work in the living room or in the kitchen, and my laptop works just great. In my office, though, I've got 3 or 4 different desktop PCs because they're cheaper and they're easier to expand. Every couple months, I add something to this one, take something out of that one, and so on. So portability and price are definitely the main reason for PC versus laptop. What about laptop versus tablet? Let's assume you want something portable, so you're either going to get a laptop or a tablet. Now it boils down to, are you going to be a producer or a consumer of information? Tablets are good for consuming information, for browsing the web, for reading ebooks, for watching movies or listening to music. Tablets are great. I use mine all the time. Actually, I don't use my tablet now so much as I got a bigger phone, but that's a different story altogether. Tablets and big smartphones are good for consuming information, for reading, for watching, for listening. On the other hand, if you're a producer of content, you do a lot of writing, you record videos like I'm doing, you need to edit stuff, anything that involves a lot of typing, you definitely want to go with a laptop. Now, the line between laptop and tablet is becoming blurred. The new tablets like Microsoft Surface Tablet has a keyboard, and you can get keyboard attachments for most tablets. But tablets are also a little pricey. You can get better, faster hardware in a laptop a lot less pricey than you can in a tablet. So if you don't really care about the touch interface and the swiping and all that stuff, laptops are going to give you more bang for the buck right now. This may change in a year or two, but as of right now, laptops are cheaper. Tablets are still more of a novelty item. But of course, I fully expect that to change over the next couple of years. And especially if you want to be able to run your classic Windows applications, your old versions of Photoshop or Microsoft Office or those kinds of things, you definitely want to go with a laptop. Microsoft has the Surface tablet coming out, the Surface Pro tablet, that will run your classic Windows apps. But it's much, much more expensive than you can get a similar laptop for. Of course, no disrespect to Microsoft, but laptops are a lot cheaper. Now, if you're planning on upgrading another computer to Windows 8, ignore what Microsoft says the specs are. Of course, Microsoft always lists the minimum specs required. This is what I say you should have. If you're going to put Windows 8 on a computer, you should have at least a 3 gigahertz processor, 4 gigs of RAM, 200 gigs of hard drive space just for the OS, your apps, and other miscellaneous goodies, and a 17-inch monitor with a resolution of at least 1600 by 900, at least. Now, any new computer bought in 2012 or 2013 should match those specs unless you got some bargain basement discount. So any new computer should be fine and should meet or exceed these specifications. But that's just what I say you should have to run Windows 8 if you're planning on upgrading an older machine.